Counsel Judge Morgan Ryder presiding.
Please be seated. All right, give me just a minute because someone was sitting at my desk. Did someone use this courtroom yesterday?
Was not here. I don't know if Judge Hogan used it for a short period because we told him to go to for golf. So.
Okay, we can bring in Mr. Bradley. Okay, any preliminary matters on behalf of the state? Any preliminary matters on behalf of the defense? Yes, you may. Okay. Okay, then we'll, is the jury up?
They are.
Okay, we'll bring them into the courtroom.
Yes, ma'am.
Jury present, all rise.
Please be seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Has anyone read or been exposed to reading newspaper headlines and/or articles relating to this trial or its participants? Have you seen or heard television, radio, or internet comments about this trial? Have you read any news headlines or articles relating to the trial or its participants? Have you conducted or been exposed to any research regarding any matters concerning this case? And have you discussed this case among yourselves or with anyone else, or allowed anyone to discuss it in your presence? Okay. Who would be the next witness on behalf of the state?
State calls Agent Daniel Ogden.
Sir, if you'll come forward, step up before the clerk to be sworn.
You can raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, to help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay, sir, please be seated in the witness chair. And once seated, if you'll scoot your chair forward, do adjust that microphone, do talk into that microphone. It helps us hear your testimony. It also aids in recording your testimony.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. McMaster.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, sir. If you would please state your name for the record and spell your last name.
My name is Agent Daniel Ogden, Ogden,
And how are you employed?
I work with the Brevard County Sheriff's Office
And how long have you been employed with the Sheriff's Office?
since 2002.
And in what capacity?
I'm an agent with the Seart unit.
Sworn law enforcement officer?
Yes, I am.
Were you so employed on the day of March 6th of 2012?
Yes, I was.
And on that date, did you have an occasion to become involved in the investigation into the shooting of Deputy Barbara Hill?
Yes, I did.
What was your participation?
I was at the hospital in the emergency room when she was,
I'm sorry to cut you off.
when I arrived there, she was already in the emergency room.
And did you have an occasion to take into custody any evidence there at the hospital?
Yes, I did.
What did you take into custody?
A metal fragment that was located underneath her body.
Show you, may I approach the witness, Judge?
Yes, you may.
I'd like to show you what's been marked for identification. The state's Exhibit FH. Box top to the top. And ask if you can identify.
Yes, I can.
And how can you identify?
It is has my initials on it.
And what did you do with the projectile once you received it at the hospital?
I placed it in a bag. I wrote the nurse's name on it, the time I collected it, and then I transported it to the CID building where I placed it in this envelope.
Did you seal it up at the time that you took it to the CID office?
Yes, I did. Then I initialed the evidence tape.
And does the package in front of you, Exhibit FH, contain your initials and the date that you sealed it up?
Yes, it does.
Now, the packaging is a little bit different today than it was when you sealed it up. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And does it indicate that it's been sent off to FDLE and was further examined by them?
I don't know if it says it was sent off to FDLE on it.
I take it all you can tell is that there are additional seals on it.
Yeah, it's been cut open, and then there's other markings that were put on it and other initials, but where I sealed it, which is the opening of the envelope, it has my initials and my date, my handwriting on it.
And did you seal it up on March 6th of 2012?
Yes, I did.
And on that date, was it the same condition as you received it at the hospital earlier that day?
Yes, it was.
No changes to it, no alterations to it?
No.
No further questions, please.
Cross-examination by the defense. Okay, sir, thank you for your testimony. You're free to step down.
Thank you.
State will call Ron Strife.
Okay, sir, if you'll come forward, step up before the clerk to be sworn.
You can raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, to help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And please be seated in the witness chair. And once you're seated, if you'll scoot that chair forward, do adjust that microphone and do talk into that microphone.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
If you would, please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Ron Strife, Streiff.
And how are you employed?
With the Melbourne Police Department Crime Scene Unit.
And how long have you been with the crime scene unit at the Melbourne Police Department?
With the Crime Scene Unit, 7 years.
And in prior law enforcement experience?
17 years.
Where was that?
At the Melbourne Police Department as well as the Cocoa Beach Police Department.
Okay. Were you employed at the Melbourne Police Department in the crime scene unit on or about March 6th of 2012?
Yes, sir.
On that date, did you have an occasion to become involved in the investigation into the shooting of Deputy Barbara Hill?
Yes, sir, I did.
What was your participation?
I was notified of the shooting that occurred on John Rhodes Boulevard and responded out to John Rhodes Boulevard, where I made contact with other members of the Melbourne Police Department and Brevard County Sheriff's Department.
Were you ultimately directed to participate in an examination or a search of a garage area or residence on Janewood in the nearby neighborhood?
Yes, I was.
And did you in fact do that?
Yes, I did.
Approach witness, Judge.
Yes, you may.
Showing you what has been admitted in evidence as exhibits 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, and 58. Would you look at those and tell me if you can identify?
Yes, sir.
And how can you identify them?
These are the photos that I took of Janewood Drive.
And do they display the garage area that you performed your crime scene investigation on that day?
Yes, sir, it does.
And in particular, do the photographs reflect a cell phone located in the garage?
Yes, it does.
And did you in fact take that cell phone into evidence?
Yes, sir, I did.
Showing you what has been marked for identification, states exhibit BI Bravo India. Would you look at that and tell me if you can identify?
Yes, sir.
And how can you identify?
This is the package of the cell phone.
Now, I take it that once you seized the cell phone, what did you do with it?
It was placed in a marked evidence bag and secured in a crime scene van.
Did you place it into the marked evidence envelope that's in front of you now?
No, sir.
Someone else actually packaged it up, you just seized it?
Correct, yes, sir.
I could, some scissors. The bag's currently sealed, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Did you open it up and take a look inside? To yourself?
Okay.
Is that the cell phone that you seized out of the garage that's displayed in the photographs?
That is actually the bag the evidence bag that I had filled out is inside.
It's inside. And is the phone inside?
I believe so, yes, it is.
Can you see? Is it a...
No. Would you like me to open that envelope as well?
On the inside?
Yes, sir.
And does the cell phone inside appear to be in substantially the same condition today as it was the day that you sealed it up?
Yes, it does.
State would move exhibit
BI.
I. This next number.
Response from the defense? Yes, you may.
Okay. We approve.
Yes, you may. Okay, states BI will be received as states 128.
Mr. Strife, once the cell phone was seized by the Melbourne Police Department, was it subsequently turned over to the Sheriff's Office for further examination?
Yes, it was.
And this is the cell phone that the homeowner indicated was not his, did not belong to him?
That is correct.
The state would request permission to publish Exhibit 1.
Yes, you may.
No further questions?
We'll wait till after they've published it. Okay, cross-examination by the defense.
No questions.
Okay, sir, thank you for your testimony. You're free to step down.
State calls Amy Seart.
Ma'am, if you'll come forward, step up before the clerk to be sworn.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you.
And if you'll please be seated in the witness chair, and once seated, if you'll scoot that chair forward, do adjust that microphone, and do talk into the microphone. Okay, Mr. McMaster?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Morning.
If you would, please state your name and spell your last name correctly.
Amy Seart, S-I-E-W-E-R-T.
How are you employed?
I am employed by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, Orlando Regional Operations Center.
And in what capacity with FDLA?
I am a crime laboratory analyst assigned to the firearm section.
And how long have you done that for FDLA?
I have been with FDLE for almost 12 years, 9 of which have been with the firearm section.
And would you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury your education, training, and background to hold the position of an analyst with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the firearm section?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry. In addition, I completed a 6-month firearms training program as a forensic technologist, and this enabled me to perform function examinations on firearms. As an analyst, I had an additional 14 months of hands-on structured training in firearms identification. This included firearm operating systems, identification of bullets and cartridge cases, and distance determinations in clothing.
And in your capacity as an analyst with FDLE, have you in fact performed examinations on firearms in the past?
Yes.
How many different occasions?
I've probably examined several thousand firearms over my time.
Have you testified in courts of law in the state of Florida with respect to the firearm examinations that you conducted?
Yes, I have.
And how many occasions?
21.
And have you been accepted by those courts as an expert in your field of firearms examination?
Yes.
Ms. Seart, did you have an occasion to assist the Brevard County Sheriff's Office by examining a firearm and related materials in the case involving the death of Deputy Barbara Hill?
I did.
Recall when was you became involved in the investigation?
May I refer to my...
Certainly. Would refresh your recollection, please.
I received the evidence on March 15th of 2012.
And what evidence did you receive?
I received a firearm magazine, 8 fired cartridge cases, and 8 fired projectiles or components of projectiles.
Approach, Ms. Judge.
Yes, you may.
Showing you first what has been entered into evidence as the Exhibit 124. Approach, witness.
Yes, you may.
Would you look at that and tell me if you can identify?
I can,
And how can you identify?
by the FDLE case number, exhibit number, and my initials.
I take it you placed those on the box?
Yes.
And did you, in fact, examine the firearm that's inside the box?
I did.
What type of test did you perform on the firearm itself?
I performed a standard firearm examination to determine if the firearm was functioning and safe to test fire. And then using laboratory ammunition, I test fired the firearm.
Showing you what has been marked for identification, states Exhibit EF, Echo Foxtrot. ahead and tell me if you can identify that?
Yes, I can.
How can you identify?
Again, the FDLE case number, exhibit number, and my initials.
Does it match the weapon that was submitted as Exhibit 124?
Can you rephrase?
Was it submitted
Same.
in connection with the same
Yes.
case
Yes, it's from the same case.
from the Brevard County Sheriff's Office?
Correct.
And I take it Exhibit EF is sealed up with your initials and the evidence date, is that correct?
Yes.
Leave dates.
We're going to see, would you please open the Exhibit EF and look at the object inside? And can you identify?
Yes, it is, may I pull it out?
Sure.
It is a magazine.
And is it substantially the same condition today as it was on the date that you received it for examination?
Yes.
The state would move Exhibit EF into evidence at this time.
Okay, response from the defense? Okay, EF will be received as State's Exhibit 129.
What was the testing that you did with Exhibit 124 and 129?
I, as previously stated, had examined the firearm to see whether it was safe to test fire. I made notes of make, model, serial number, checked the integrity of the barrel, the frame, to ensure that it was safe, and then using laboratory ammunition, the firearm and the magazine test fired into our water tank, and then I retained the tests, the fired cartridge cases and bullets.
And did you determine whether or not the weapon was in fact operational?
Yes, the firearm was functional.
Was there anything in particular that you measured with respect to the weapon, utilizing the magazine and the ammo from that deal?
I measured the trigger pull.
And what's the purpose of it?
The trigger pull is the amount of force in pounds required to pull the trigger and release the firing mechanism.
And what was it that you determined the trigger pull to be on that particular weapon?
It was between 6.5 and 6 3/4 pounds.
And is that a standard trigger pull for this type of weapon?
Yes.
It takes a considerable amount of force to be able to pull the trigger.
Objection on the calls contained regulation.
Okay, as to the form of the question, I'll sustain the objection.
Does it take a particular amount of force to be able to pull the trigger on this weapon in order to fire, discharge a cartridge barrel?
Yes, the force is between 6.5 and 6 3/4 pounds.
Did you perform any additional testing on those items?
No.
Showing you what has been marked for identification as exhibits CT, that's Charlie Tango, FA, Foxtrot Alpha, FC, Foxtrot Charlie, FH, Foxtrot Hotel, and EL, Echo Lima. Would you look at those and tell me if you can identify them?
Yes, I can.
How can you identify them?
FDLE case number, exhibit number, and my initials.
And are each of those exhibits sealed up with evidence tape and your initials and date on them?
Yes,
And did you perform examinations on each one of those objects?
I did.
Let's take them one by one. If you could find the one marked as CT first. Can you identify that object?
Yes, this is a fired bullet.
And what tests, if any, did you perform on the fired bullet?
I microscopically compared this fired bullet to tests fired from the submitted firearm.
How do you do that?
I will put the bullets onto the microscope. I have a comparison microscope which has 2 different stages, allowing me to see 2 different objects at the same time, separated by a hairline, and I'm able to compare them side by side and move the stages so I can line them up.
And where did you get the test projectile?
From test firing the firearm.
You actually put a bullet into the weapon, fired it, recovered the projectile, and used that as the test because you actually fired it?
Yes.
And did you then compare it to the projectile that is now marked as Exhibit CT?
Yes, I did.
And what conclusions, if any, did you reach with respect to Exhibit CT?
The bullet was identified as having been fired from the pistol.
Exhibit 124.
Yes.
And if you would, could you open Exhibit CT, please? And is Exhibit CT in substantially the same condition today as the day it was that you examined it and sealed it up?
It is.
State will move Exhibit CT into evidence.
Response from the defense?
Objection.
CT will be received as states number 130.
Ms. Seart, how exactly is it that you make the match to determine that the projectile is out of the fired gun?
What I'm looking at essentially are a series of scratches that are imparted onto the surface of the bullet as it travels down the barrel. And what I'm looking for is similarities in the width, the depth, the spatial relationship of all of these lines relative to each other.
And request permission from Ms. Seart to be able to hold up Exhibit 130 and display it, publish it to the jury.
Yes, you may.
If you would go ahead and show the jury what we're talking about. And does the information submitted to you indicate where that particular projectile was recovered from?
Yes, it does.
Where was that?
From the side of the front of the vest.
That's the armored vest worn by Deputy Bill.
Yes.
Set that one back aside. Go ahead and put that back in the envelope, please. And if you could get the envelope marked FA for identification. Can you identify that?
This is also one fired bullet.
And did you perform a test on that similar to the test that you conducted on Exhibit 130?
I did.
And if you would, go ahead and open that up and take a look inside. And what is Exhibit FA?
It is one fired bullet.
And where was this particular bullet recovered from?
from the left post-lateral chest wall under skin.
It was recovered by the medical examiner at the autopsy of the remains of the deputy.
I believe so.
And is the exhibit in substantially the same condition today as it was the day that you examined it and sealed it up?
It is.
State will move FA as its next exhibit.
Response from the defense?
No objection.
FA will be received as 131, states number 131.
Request permission to publish to the jury through Ms. Seart.
Yes, you may.
Ma'am, go ahead and explain that to the jury and explain to them what testing you performed on what the results were.
Here's the fired bullet. And I performed the same examination on this as I did to the previous fired bullet, comparing it microscopically to tests fired from the pistol, Exhibit 124.
Did you determine that, in fact, that projectile had been fired from the weapon that's Exhibit 124?
Yes, it was identified as having been fired from the pistol.
What type of weapon are we talking about?
It's a .40 Smith & Wesson caliber Glock Model 27 Gen 4 semi-automatic pistol.
And in order to fire a bullet through the weapon, you have to pull the trigger each time?
Yes.
Turn to Exhibit FC. Back in the envelope, please. Can you identify that exhibit?
This is one fired bullet as well.
Go ahead and open it. Take a look at it. And can you identify it?
Yes.
And is Exhibit FC in substantially the same condition today as the day you examined it and sealed it up?
It is.
State move Exhibit FC into evidence.
Okay, response from the defense?
No objection.
FC will be received as states number 132.
Request permission from Ms. Seart to publish.
Yes, you may.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
This particular bullet, while I was cleaning and examining, had come apart. This is the core, the center of the bullet, and this is the jacketing. As it was originally received, they were together in one piece.
And where was that projectile recovered from?
Under the skin of the right side of the upper back.
Was again recovered by the medical examiner during the autopsy of Deputy Bell's remains.
Yes.
Back, please. Turn to Exhibit FH. Go ahead and examine that. First of all, can you identify the packaging?
Yes. It is one fired bullet.
And is Exhibit FH in substantially the same condition today as it was on the day that you examined it and sealed it up?
It is.
Statement of FH is its next exhibit.
A response from the defense?
No objection.
FH will be State's Exhibit 133.
Request permission to publish.
Yes, you may.
Please go ahead. Show the ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
And what testing, if any, did you do on Exhibit 133?
I microscopically compared this fired bullet to tests fired from the firearm.
And what were the results?
The bullet was identified as having been fired from the pistol.
And where did this particular projectile?
This is marked as having been taken in the ER.
Emergency room?
Yes.
Go ahead and put those back inside. Turn to Exhibit EL. You identify Exhibit EL.
Yes.
And how can you identify?
My case number, exhibit number, and my initials.
We'll go ahead and open it up and take a look at it. What is Exhibit EL?
It is one fired bullet jacket.
Is it in substantially the same condition today as the day that you tested it and sealed it up?
It is.
State will move Exhibit EL as its next exhibit.
Response from the defense?
No objection.
Okay, EL will be received as 134, State's number 134.
Request permission to publish.
Yes, you may.
Show that to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Explain to them what testing you did on it, what the results were.
This is a fired bullet jacket portion. The base is right here. It's folded over on itself. And I compared this microscopically to tests fired from the submitted firearm.
And what were the results?
I determined this was identified as having been fired from the submitted pistol.
So each of the exhibits, 130 through 134, the various projectiles that you examined that are in front of you currently, were each identified as having been fired from the block weapon, which is Exhibit 124.
Yes.
And where did this particular projectile jacket portion come from?
Interior of front driver's side door.
That back in. addition to the examination conducted on the projectiles that we just went through, did you also examine additional portions of projectiles to try to determine whether or not they had been fired in the weapon 124?
I did.
Showing you what has been admitted as State's Exhibit 134, and for identification, Exhibits FB and CU. Look at those and tell me if you can identify.
Yes, I can.
Exhibit 134 that's already in evidence was the jacket of a projectile that had been removed from the driver's door that you were able to match to the weapon. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was there also additional fragments that were with that as part of that exhibit that you were unable to determine whether it was fired or not?
Yes, there was.
Is it totally separate from the piece that you held up and displayed to the jury?
It is.
If you would explain, request permission to publish that to the jury.
And you're talking about 134?
Yeah, there's a couple different parts to
Okay.
134.
Yes, you may.
It's a smaller piece, was recovered and submitted as an overall object.
Yes, it was.
And what were the results of the testing that you did on that smaller piece?
This was inconclusive.
What does that mean?
There was not enough markings or information on that particular portion to make a determination whether it was or was not fired from.
Is that part of 134? It is.
That's what I was clarifying. It appears to be part of 134.
The larger portion that you were able to identify is also included in State's Exhibit 134, is that correct?
Yes.
It's inside the same box?
Yes.
Okay, just set that aside and let's look at FB. And can you identify FB?
Yes.
What is Exhibit FB?
It is one fired bullet jacket base portion, one fired bullet jacket fragment, and one piece of lead.
You would go ahead and open it. And is Exhibit FB, both portions of it, in substantially the same condition today as it was on the date that you examined it and sealed it up?
Yes.
State will move Exhibit FB as its next on the exhibit.
Response from the defense?
No, sir.
Okay, FB will be received as State's Exhibit 135.
And request permission to publish?
Yes, you may.
Would Ms. Seart show that to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, tell them what testing you did on those and what the results were?
I received two pieces of jacket fragments. This larger one is of the base portion, and this smaller one here. And I examined both of these microscopically to test fired from the pistol.
And where were those fragments from?
These were identified as having come from the head.
During the autopsy of Deputy Pell's remains?
Yes.
Put those aside, please.
And I also,
Did I ask you what the results were?
no.
Go ahead and show the other part there.
This is a piece of lead, which is most likely from the core of the bullet.
Likewise recovered at the autopsy?
Yes.
Deputy Bill? And what were the results of your examination with respect to Exhibit 135?
The 2 jacket fragments were inconclusive. Again, there was not enough information either way for me to make a determination if they were or were not fired from the pistol. And the piece of lead did not have any marks for me to compare microscopically.
Okay. Exhibit CU. I believe you indicated you could identify the packaging, is that correct?
Yes.
Still sealed?
Yes.
Go ahead and take a look inside. And can you identify?
Yes.
Is Exhibit CU in substantially the same condition today as it was on the date you examined it and sealed it up?
It is.
State will move CU as its number.
Response from the defense.
No objection.
Okay, CU will be received as state's number 136.
Request permission to publish.
Yes, you may.
Would Ms. Seart go ahead and display that to the jury and explain to them what testing you did on it and what the results were of this
Exhibit.
This is another piece of bullet jacket, fired bullet jacket, and I compared this microscopically to tests fired from the pistol.
And what were the results of the examination?
This was also inconclusive.
And where was that projectile jacket fragment recovered from?
It's labeled PM55.
Put a marker 55 at the crime scene on the later wing?
I do not know.
Just notes. PM 55.
Yes.
Go ahead. That aside, please.
On Exhibit 135, there were several different pieces of that exhibit, is that correct?
Yes.
And was there one piece of that that you were not able
To do anything other than a visual exam on?
Yes.
Explain what it was or why you couldn't do anything further with that particular piece.
That was a piece of lead, which was most likely a bullet core. And that is not something that will have any type of markings for a microscopic examination.
And where did that piece of lead come from? On Exhibit 135?
asked and answered several times?
Okay, I do recall that she's answered that previously, so I'll sustain the objection.
Showing you what has been marked for exhibit, this states Exhibit EM. Should look at that and tell me if you can identify.
Yes.
And how can you identify EM?
FBLE case number, exhibit number, and my initials.
E,
In November or Mike?
I'm sorry. Is that FP?
F,
Let me run this back.
yes, you may.
EM. Can you identify that?
yes.
And how can you identify it?
FBLE case number, exhibit number, and my initials.
And Would you open it up, please? And is Exhibit EM in substantially the same condition today as the date that you examined?
It is.
State would move EM as its next number exhibit.
Response from the defense?
No objection.
EM will be received as states number 136, 137.
Showing you what, request permission to publish.
Yes, you may.
Seart, what did you do with the 137?
This is a piece of lead, and again, this was most likely from the bullet core, so it had no value for microscopic comparison.
So you weren't able to determine one way or the other whether it had been fired from the weapon?
No.
And where was Exhibit 137 recovered from?
It's labeled as the interior front of driver's side door.
Please.
Yes, you may.
Seart, I put in front of you what has been marked for identification as Exhibits EK, CV, CW, CX, CY, CZ, DA, and DB. Did you look at those? Pardon me, tell me if you can identify them.
Yes.
And how can you identify them?
The FDLE case number, exhibit numbers, and my initials.
Did you in fact examine those items and once your examination was concluded, seal them up in the condition that they're in today?
I did.
State would move Exhibits EK through EB into evidence at this time.
Okay.
Okay, EK will be received as State's Exhibit 138. Starts with CV. Will be received as 139. CW will be received as 140. CX will be received as 141. CY will be received as 142. CZ will be received as 143. DA will be received as 144. DB will be received as 145.
Now, what has been admitted into evidence is Exhibits 138 to 145. Take the Exhibit 138 first.
If you would go ahead and open that up. Request permission to publish to the jury.
Yes, you may.
Go ahead and show the jury what it is and explain to them what testing, if any, you did on that exhibit.
This is one fired cartridge case, and I compared this microscopically to cartridge cases that I fired from the submitted firearm.
And what determination, if any, were you able to make about that particular case?
This cartridge case was identified as having been fired in the submitted firearm.
Which is Exhibit 124 before you?
Yes.
If you would, open Exhibit 139. Where did that particular Exhibit 138 come from?
Labeled as the front passenger side floorboard.
All right? And 139. Go ahead and open that. Request permission to publish.
Yes, you may.
If you would, go ahead and display that to the jury and explain to them what testing you did, if any, on that one.
This is another fired cartridge case, and I compared this microscopically to cartridge cases I fired from Exhibit 124.
And what were the results of the testing you did?
The cartridge case was identified as having been fired in the pistol.
Exhibit 124?
Yes.
And where did that case come from?
It's labeled as PM61.
Photo marker 61. With respect to Exhibits 140 through 145, the remaining exhibits before you, did you perform similar testing on each of those items?
I did.
And what are those items?
They are all fired cartridge cases as well.
And the remaining exhibits are labeled as coming from where?
They all have different photo marker labels.
In total, you examined 8 casings, is that correct? 1 from the vehicle and 8 that the photo markers?
Yes.
And what were your conclusions as to each of the casings?
All 8 of the cartridge cases were identified as having been fired in the Exhibit 124 pistol.
Okay, cross-examination by the defense.
No question.
Okay, ma'am, thank you for your testimony. You're free to step down. Okay, other witnesses by the state.
State will call Virginia Casey.
Ma'am, if you'll come forward, step up before the clerk to be sworn.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes, ma'am, I do. Thank you.
If you'll have a seat in the witness chair and once seated, if you'll scoot that chair forward. Do adjust that microphone and do talk into that microphone.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
My name is Virginia Casey, C-A-S-E-Y.
And how are you employed?
I'm employed as a crime scene investigator with the Brevard County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been so employed?
With the Sheriff's Office for 23 years.
Do you have any prior employment in that line?
Yes, sir, I do. I was previously employed with the Sarasota Police Department for 7 years as a crime scene investigator and a latent print examiner.
And can you tell the jury what type of training you have, educational background and training in the area of crime scene investigation as well as latent print examination?
Yes, sir. In 1983, I began training with the Sarasota Police Department in analysis of persons' fingerprint records and applying the Henry system of fingerprint classification to those records for record-keeping purposes. 2 years after that, I became a crime scene investigator in 1985, and I began studying not only crime scene investigations, but latent print analysis. And that would be the comparison of unknown friction-ridge impressions to persons' fingerprints. Since 1985, I have over 1,500 hours of specialized training that I have received in both crime scene investigations and latent print analysis. And I'm currently certified with the International Association of Identification as a latent print examiner and a crime scene analyst.
And have you previously testified in court first as a crime scene investigator?
Yes, I have.
And approximately how many times have you so testified?
In 28 years, I've testified over 100 times in crime scene investigative cases.
And how about as a latent print examiner?
As a latent print examiner, I would say no less than 100 times, and I have testified in the circuit courts of Sarasota, Polk, and Brevard County, as well as federal court in Orlando.
And can you tell the jury, over your career, how many latent prints have you examined?
I have analyzed over 10,000 latent impressions during my career.
And Virginia Casey, first, Ms. Casey, are you familiar with what's known as a GSR or GSR test?
Yes, sir, I am.
And what is a GSR test?
GSR is an acronym for gunshot residue, and it's a test that can be performed commonly on hands to determine if gunshot residue particles are present on the hand.
And at this point, does Florida law enforcement, the laboratory, still test, do GSR type testing or examination?
The Florida Department of Law Enforcement crime laboratories do not any longer accept submissions of gunshot residue tests for analysis.
And are you familiar with gunshot residue? What is that?
Gunshot residue is a combination of antimony and barium, which are components of what bullets are made from. And the residue occurs as a result of when a weapon has been fired, those residues emit from the barrel of the weapon after it has been fired.
And when they emit, do they kind of go like the pattern all over?
Yeah, it's a burst of a powdery type of substance.
And if it's fired, someone has gunshot residue on them, what does that tell you?
It tells us that someone has been in contact or in the vicinity of a weapon that has been fired. However, it doesn't tell us whether a person actually fired that weapon or not.
So if a person's fired from close range, would you expect the person who was hit by the bullet to have gunshot residue?
I would expect if a person was in the general vicinity of an area where a firearm has been fired, that yes, there could be gunshot residue on that person, even if they were just in the vicinity.
And would that likelihood increase if it's an enclosed area, such as a vehicle?
I would say yes.
Now, Ms. Casey, in this particular case, did you perform any fingerprint examination?
Yes, I did.
And can you tell the jury, when you're doing a fingerprint examination, first, what is a fingerprint? How is it formed?
When we refer to fingerprints, we are actually referring to friction-ridged skin. And that friction-ridged skin is on the bottom of the fingers, the palms of the hands, and the soles of the feet. Friction-ridged skin are raised lines of skin. They help us actually with gripping purposes. And between those raised lines of skin are furrows. And within those raised lines of skin are pores. And the pores allow the excretions of our perspiration, oils, and salts. So we refer it generally as fingerprints, but analysis can include not only just a fingerprint, it can include from the joint areas of the fingers, from the palms of the hands, or even the soles of the feet. But the general reference that most people hear is fingerprints. Therefore, when I refer to fingerprints, I'm also going to be referring to friction-ridged skin lines. And when we conduct an analysis, we have a latent fingerprint or we have a known fingerprint. A known fingerprint is that impression that is actually recorded from a known person. So when we apply ink to a person's finger and then we actually roll it onto a card, that to an analyst is considered the known or an exemplar of that person. A latent impression, it is the unknown impression. It is the partial impression of friction-ridged skin lines that are commonly developed using different chemicals and powders. It normally is invisible to the naked eye. It is left by when we have our excretions of our perspiration, salts, and oils, and then we touch an object. We will leave an impression of our friction-ridged skin, or can. I shouldn't say will always, but we can most often leave impressions of our friction-ridged skin lines. When those impressions are left, we then use those powders or chemicals because it's not visible to the naked eye. We use those powders and chemicals to make it visible to the naked eye. So in conducting an analysis as a latent print examiner, I will have the unknown impression or the latent print, and I will have the exemplar or the known impression. The general description that most people hear in fingerprints is that we have patterns within our fingerprints, whorls, loops, and arches. And those are common patterns that are found in the fingers, the first joint of the fingers. The patterns assist us with, for record-keeping purposes. However, the patterns are not what we are using to make an identification. We're actually looking at the individual lines of friction-ridged skin that form into unique characteristics. For instance, you will have one line of friction-ridged skin that is flowing along, and it'll continue to flow throughout without stopping or forming into any unique characteristics. However, the friction-ridged line directly next to it could be flowing along and it'll stop flowing. And we call that an ending ridge. And that's a unique characteristic that we look for when we're conducting our analysis. Another unique characteristic that we will look for is a line of friction-ridged skin that flows along, and then it'll break off into two lines of friction-ridged skin, and we call that a bifurcation. Those characteristics I look for in my analysis in the unknown impression. I find those characteristics and where they are located in relationship to each other in the unknown impression, and then I search in the known impression to see if those same ridge characteristics in the same general in the same location to each other are found within the known print or the exemplar. So the comparison is done between one and the other, looking for characteristics that are in agreement from the unknown impression to the known impression.
Ms. Casey, you indicated that when you touch an object that you may leave friction-ridged detail. What are the factors that go into when you touch an object that would determine whether you leave friction-ridged detail or whether you don't?
Well, one would be the weather that we're having today. It's very cold outside, and so we are not perspiring as much as we might, and so we're not excreting the perspiration out of the pores. In very cold weather, we have very dry skin, and so therefore we are not, it's common to not leave an impression. Surface type is another big deficit that we deal with, because on rough surfaces, it oftentimes is very difficult for us to get a good, clear, unknown impression. So mostly weather conditions and surface is the majority of the times in which we might not be able to recover unknown and latent impressions.
How would the moving of a person's hand or fingers affect friction-ridged detail?
It causes distortion. The distortion is our skin is elastic, it is stretchable, and so when we are moving and we are touching an object, and especially if some force is applied, and it can actually be just a very small amount of force, but that pressure or that movement could cause some distortion within the friction ridge lines. Oftentimes, the distortion is not so severe that as an analyst, under magnification, that we cannot still clearly find those unique characteristics that I was referring to. But there are other times that it is so severe that it will completely obliterate those friction ridge lines, and therefore it makes it of no value to us.
Madam, may I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit GF for identification. Do you recognize that exhibit?
Yes, I do.
And how do you recognize it?
This envelope has my handwriting on it, and I've sealed it and put my initials on it.
And what is that envelope?
This envelope contains the fingerprint exemplars that I recorded from Mr. Brandon Bradley.
And did you take those directly yourself?
Yes, sir, I did.
And do you see the person in the courtroom that you took those fingerprints from?
Yes, sir, I do.
And can you please point them out, describe what clothing that he's wearing?
He is the gentleman on the table to my right, and his suit is gray, and I believe his shirt is lavender.
And I'll let the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant. Can you tell the jury when you took those prints, what do you do?
I use the inking method for recording these prints, and I have a table that I apply ink to a slab, a flat slab, and I then roll the finger of the person who I'm recording from on the ink, and then I roll that same finger onto a card.
Is that a similar method that people have probably seen on TV over the years?
I would say yes.
At this time, the state would move what's marked as Exhibit
GF.
into evidence.
Okay, GF will be received as State's Exhibit 146.
I'm not asking for the witness to be allowed to open it and display it to the jury.
Yes, you may.
Please just display that to the jury. Now, Ms. Casey, in this case, have you reviewed a disc of photographs that came from the lead crime scene technician on this case?
Yes, I have.
And can you tell the jury, when those pictures are captured in a disc and they come to you, what do you do with that disc?
In the case of images of latent impressions, I bring them up in the Photoshop software program. I commonly will, there are oftentimes a color version, and because it is better for my eyes when viewing it to look at it in a black and white version, I will convert the impression over into a black and white version.
Can I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
I want to show you what's been marked and admitted as Exhibits 126 and 127. Do you recognize those exhibits?
Yes, I do.
And what are those exhibits?
These are the color images of two of the latent impressions that were on the disc that I reviewed.
And are they labeled on the back as DP2 and DP5?
Yes, sir, they are.
And DP2 is number 126, DP5 is 127?
Yes, sir.
And when you spoke the color images, that's kind of the greenish color.
Yes, it is.
And did you take those images and what did you do with those?
When I reviewed those images in Photoshop, I can just converted them over into a black and white version.
And when you do that, has anything changed as far as the detail within the image?
No, it doesn't change the detail within the image. It just changes it so that you're looking at it as black and white instead of color.
I'm going to show you now what's been marked as exhibits GI and GH. You recognize those exhibits?
Yes, I do.
And what are those exhibits?
These are the black and white versions of the color versions of the image that I converted.
And are they identical to exhibits 126 and 127?
Yes, they are.
And are those exhibits also marked as being DP2 and DP5?
Yes, sir, they are.
And at this time, the state would move to admit exhibits GH, GI, and GH. Okay.
Okay, GI will be received as State's Exhibit 147, and GH will be received as State's Exhibit 148.
Ms. Casey, do these exhibits indicate where these prints are located at,
Yes, sir, they do.
and what do they indicate?
They indicated that these prints were developed from item FE11, and it's a tray.
And did you do a comparison between the exhibits, the unknown latents, and the exhibit 146, the prints she rolled from Mr. Brett?
Yes, sir, I did.
Now, may I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
I'm going to show you what has been marked as exhibit GG. You recognize that exhibit?
Yes, I did.
And what is that?
This is a chart I completed. It is the unknown latent impression that is labeled DP5. Originally, in the original document, when I extracted a portion of that in that original image, I labeled it DP5A. So the portion that I extracted was labeled DP5A. And the other side of the chart is the known exemplar impression of a number 2 right index finger that I recorded from Mr. Brandon Bradley.
And do the images on there, are they exact duplicates of the items that have already been admitted into evidence?
They are exact duplicates of portions of the items that have been admitted into evidence. Yes, sir.
And why is it portions?
Because in order to put it into the chart format, I only extracted a small portion of the area that I was using to document the analytical process and the characteristics that were in agreement.
Given at this time, the state would move exhibit GG as the next numbered state into evidence, as the next numbered state exhibit.
Response from the defense? Okay, GG will be received as State's Exhibit 149.
Now, may we approach?
Yes, you may. Need the easel?
Yes. Here, may I approach?
Yes, you may.
First, I want to show you an exhibit that has been marked as 125. Is that exhibit listed as FE11?
Yes, sir, it is.
It is also indicated as the ammunition box and the tray that was inside of the box.
That's what it indicates on there, yes.
And it also indicates it came from within the suspect's vehicle.
Yes, it did.
And at this time, I would ask the court deputy to pass out a small version of this exhibit to each juror.
Yes, you may.
And I might have Ms. Casey step down.
She may step down.
Ms. Casey, looking at first on the exhibit on the right-hand side, you indicate no print right index. Can you, using exhibit number 146, indicate to the jury what is the right index and what portion did you put onto this exhibit?
This finger in this block is the right index finger. And the portion that I am showing on is this portion right here. It's going to be this section here of the right index.
I also want to show you what is marked as exhibit 148. It's the DP5. Would you please display that to the jury and tell the jury, show the jury what portion is depicted on this exhibit?
This is the area of the friction ridge impression that is in this image. And the portion I am depicting in the chart is right here. It is going to be right here at the top of the impression.
Hand you a pen you can use as a pointer. And did your examination comparison, can you please demonstrate to the jury and point out to them what you found and what your comparison is?
As I said earlier, when I conduct an analysis, I am looking at the friction ridge characteristics that are in the unknown, and I am looking to find so I begin with the unknown, and I'm looking for the unique characteristics in the unknown impression, and then finding where they're in agreement, if they are in agreement with the known impression. And I want to point out, we discussed distortion earlier. You can see where the impression here on the latent image is not as clear and crisp in some areas. For instance, in the bottom of the impression, it's more clear and crisp, whereas in this area of the impression, it's not as clear. That is distortion. That's as a result of some kind of pressure or movement that causes that little bit of blurriness within the impression. However, in this case, the characteristics are still clear enough for the analysis to be completed. So beginning with the characteristic that would be on the bottom right of the latent impression, you can see where the arrow comes from this characteristic. This ridge is flowing along and it's coming up and it's stopping. And that is what I was referring to earlier as an ending ridge. Over here, on the known impression, you see the ridge coming up and it's stopping. And this is just a cutout enlargement of that, or you be able to see it better. In the next characteristic, if you count from that first one, if you count up 1, 2 ridges, you'll see a ridge coming from the right side of the impression, and it then stops. Moving over from the first characteristic, you do the same. You count up 1, 2, and it is also coming out from the right and stopping. Moving to the third characteristic in the unknown, and coming from the first, if you move down to the left side of it and down one, you'll see where another ridge line is moving along and ending. And the same thing, we come from that, move over to the left and down one, and we see the same characteristic. This has been done throughout this process. And all of the ridge characteristics that were found within the unknown latent impression were found to be within agreement to the known impression of the number 2 right in there.
And after doing that comparison, what, if anything, are you able to conclude?
Concluded that Mr. Brown's number 2 right index finger is the source of the unknown latent impression labeled DP5A.
Please return to your seat. Did you also examine what are exhibits 126 and 149, which are labeled the two versions of DP2?
Yes, I did.
And did you do the same type of comparison?
Bradley, number 9, we number the fingers. The right thumb is the number 1, index is number 2, all the way through 5. Left thumb is number 6, through the little finger is number 10. So his number 9 left ring finger was found to be the source of the latent impression in DP2.
Are we done with the easel?
Yes. Your Honor, may I have one moment?
Yes, you may.
I have no further questions at this time.
Okay, we need to I need to give them a break, so we're going to go ahead and do that at this time. It's 20 minutes after 10. We're going to take a 15-minute break, so I'm going to ask you to be back at 10:35. During this break, you must continue to abide by the rules governing your service as a juror. So court will be in recess for 15 minutes.
All rise.
Please be seated, and Ms. Casey, you can step down, and court will be in recess for 15 minutes. Be back here at 1:35. I mean 10:35. Thank you. I keep saying one. I'm optimistic. Mr. Ashley, did you want to talk to me for a minute?